So, friends, let's talk about the signing of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Højbjerg? Højbjerg. I'm going to stick with Højbjerg for right now. Let's talk about that signing. It was just confirmed by Fabrizio Romano, the man himself. Here we go. It was said just a few minutes ago, my time. Let's talk about it. Because every good team in the world needs a competent DM. I'll tell you that right now. So Manchester City, who they got? Rodri. And you could say they had a world-class one in Fernandinho last year and the years prior, and that's why they dropped off so much this year, because they had to transition from using Fernandinho. If you notice this year, Tottenham don't have a DM. We shoved Harry Winks there, Moussa Sissoko there, at times Eric Dyer there, and maybe 1 or 2 minutes there, here and there for Skip. That was it. So, we need a DM. We have now lost Eric Dyer as a DM. We've lost Victor Wanyama, who was an absolute unit back in the day. And we've lost Moussa Dembele, one of the most underrated players of his time in the Premier League. Let's talk about the signing, because I wasn't convinced by Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, but I hope this video convinces you a little bit more. So, let's talk about why I wasn't convinced. First reason I was not convinced by this guy was because he wasn't a DM. Or at least in my typical view of a DM. I typically view a defensive midfielder as someone who sits behind 2 more advanced central midfielders. At least in my eye, just like in a 4-3-3, can you imagine it? 3 in the midfield, and then there's 1 dropped off a bit as the 6th, as you would call them. And you see that in Liverpool, you see that Man City, Casemiro. These are people that are needed. Busquets. There's so many good DMs that are in top teams. Let's think about it for a second. I was like, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is not a typical DM. Ralph Hasenhüttl plays a weird 4-2-2-2. So you have kind of 2 center midfielders, and they're both kind of reserved. So he typically partnered with James Ward-Prowse, who I think is phenomenal, by the way. And they would share defensive responsibilities as well as creative responsibilities. And so I was kind of perplexed as to why we were even in for him, because he kind of just seemed like another Winks. That's why I wasn't convinced of him as a DM, because in my eye, he just wasn't playing there. The second reason I wasn't really convinced of this guy, when I think of a DM, I don't typically think of someone like Højbjerg. He just, I don't know. For me, I think the more modern defensive midfielder is becoming this guy who is extremely agile. You look at Ndidi, you look at Conte, you look at Fernandinho in his prime too, were all these extremely agile, could just move around the pitch anywhere type of people. And I don't know, Højbjerg doesn't really look like that. And he doesn't really look agile, he doesn't really look fast, unlike those players in their prime, obviously. Third, the thing that also made me hesitant about this guy was the fact that a lot of Southampton fans recently have come out and said, well, he wins possession a lot, but he also gives it away equally as much. And you look at it, and he has a 77% pass completion rate, which is terrible. He's given up the ball a lot. I think he's one of the least accurate shooters in the Premier League. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's true. So, yeah, there's a lot to be unconvinced by with his possession play. especially when you consider he was being molded by Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich to become a player like him who would be able to feed through balls to people, wide and inside. So perplexing as to, if he is not able to do one of his jobs as a DM, which is recycling possession, why are we into him if he's not even competent on the ball? If he's not going to be one of the most athletic DMs in the world, why buy him if he can't even do the passing that you would want to make up for that? Those were a few bad things. I was unconvinced by Højbjerg, and I was even going in the Come On You Spurs Reddit and being like, I don't know if we should get this guy. Keyboard warrior and all, what do I know? And Jose Mourinho and the scouting team that uses millions of dollars, what could they know? I obviously know everything. But here's what convinced me of this guy. His interview with Football Ramble is absolutely superb. It describes him, well, it doesn't describe him. He describes himself as this guy who is one of the most driven footballers I've ever heard of. I just, maybe I need to listen to more football interviews, but this guy just sounds, I understand why he's Southampton's captain, is what I want to say. He's only 25, but his mentality is superb, and he just seems like such a great guy. Here are some quotes from that podcast. I'll link it below. I think my biggest strength is making all the other people better. And then he goes on to say, both on and off the pitch, he wants to be like a 7 in midfield. He wants to link everything together. He wants to be the glue, which is exactly what we need. But on the mentality thing, he speaks about the mistakes he made while he was at Bayern with Pep Guardiola, how he admits that he probably could have never gone back to Bayern Munich because Pep wouldn't take him, because he made so many mistakes. He confronted Pep. He said he wanted more play time. He was impatient, but he admits he was wrong. He knows he was never going to go back to Bayern Munich, but he said, if it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years. If I have to take 10 years, it takes 10. And he's referencing getting back to the top level. He knows he's screwed up, but he wants to get back to that level. He also says, one day I'm going to play a Champions League game again. And once I play a Champions League game again, I'm going to play a Champions League final again. And once I play that Champions League final, I'm going to win it. That's the kind of mentality you want at your football club. And I think one of the main things I get out of this interview as well is that he just seems like a Tottenham player, like in terms of like niceness. I don't know how else to classify it really, but we have a lot of nice players. We really do. And I feel like this guy is just a really genuinely nice guy. And I think he'll fit in. Just personality wise. Also go watch the FIFA ratings video with him as well. That is hilarious. His thighs are huge in that. But anyways, the second point I want to bring up that did convince me, not as much as the mentality, but once I got past, I think the mentality was my into this character. And then I started digging deeper and I found, while he is not a true DM in my sense, with his shared responsibility, his numbers for a defensive midfielder were insane. I'm sure you've seen the stuff going around that's like, he has the most ball recoveries in the Premier League this season. He is absolutely superb at pressuring the opponents. I'm going to flash a few comparison things side by side here of like Højbjerg versus Winks, Højbjerg versus Wanyama at his peak, Højbjerg versus Sissoko right now. So you see like the players we have now and the players that we had back then. what we're missing. This guy is superb at pressuring people. He's not amazing in the tackle, but you have to consider he is sharing his defensive responsibility. He is not the sole six at Southampton, and he probably would be here, which would mean his numbers would hopefully go up. He was bred to be a more deep-lying player under Pep Guardiola's mold, as he references and as Pep Guardiola references in his own book. So, yeah, no, he is meant to be that deeper-lying player, and I think Jose and his staff know that. And I think they're going to use him there, and I think it's going to unlock people. Which brings me on to my third point. The formations we can use with Højbjerg are going to be great. A lot of people are saying Winks's minutes are going to be limited. I tell you not, sir. I think actually this gives us a possibility for Winks to play in his preferred position, which is great. He actually, as you will see in the stats that I showed, that he this year has transferred into a more defensive player, which is great. However, that's not his role. That's not meant to be his role. I think Winks is superb when he has his role set and in the right games. Obviously, I don't want to play Winks every game, but he has the number 8 on the back of his shirt for a reason. So he's going to play, and I think he's going to play in a 2 ahead of Højbjerg with Giovanni Lo Celso, and I would reckon that's probably the pairing we're going to see a lot of. I'm not going to say the most of, but I think it provides a good balance. I think if you're thinking of a 3-man midfield, that works good. A 2-man midfield, one more reserved, one more forward, so you could also see Højbjerg and then Winks sharing defensive responsibility. Maybe in bigger games, if we go 4-2-3-1, have Højbjerg and Winks as the double pivot. And then also in a 4-2-2, he could work. You would really want someone more creative alongside of him, though. But he knows how to play in a 2, and he knows how to play in a 6. So brings up a lot of possibilities. We tried shoving Winks in there, and I think he could do a job there, but it's not his role. But that's why we signed this guy, and I'm really excited. I'm really admittedly excited. I didn't even reference it because everyone knows part of the reason we don't play Ndombele is because we don't have defensive cover in midfield for him, and we have to shoehorn 3 people who are not defensive midfielders to try and compensate for the fact that we don't have a defensive midfielder. So the most utilitarian approach to that was Winks, Sissoko, and Gio, who all bring different skill sets, but all can also put in a tackle and a good shift. And you would argue Ndombele couldn't, even though when you look at his underlying stats, he's better than Sissoko sometimes at defense, but it's whatever. It doesn't matter. Either way, the bringing in of Højbjerg does unlock Ndombele too, and you would think Jose would be more trusting of him if Ndombele doesn't go Inter, which I really, really hope he doesn't. But I think that's why we signed Højbjerg. Those are the 3 cons, 3 pros. Hopefully you like that format. Let me know. But yeah, I'm going to do any other videos on transfer like Serge Aurier. That's an interesting saga that's panning out. And also, with this, we lose someone I really, really like in Kyle Walker-Peters. Almost a playmaker type of fullback who cuts inside and plays decisive balls, and he's really, really good with the ball at his feet. And maybe he's not cut out for a top side. I always just wonder, what if the loan system favored him and he became one of our starters for years, but just not meant to be, was it, Kyle? I love that kid though, and I think he's going to go on to do great things for Southampton, and they seem to love him there. So what does my say have to do with anything if he's happy, you know? So, but yeah, anyways, if you enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see ya next time. Come on, you Spurs.